fattore, entender
Toda experiência este tempo.
Fondation Jean-Jaurès.
Penser pour agir.
So good morning, Donika Emini. You're a member of BiEPAG, the Balkan in Europe Policy Advisory Group. And you've been dealing with the issue of Kosovo and Serbia for quite a while. A couple of questions for you. The EU has been sponsoring the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia now for quite a long time, 10 years. There has been many obstacles, a few achievements. How would you assess the role of the EU in this matter? And what is the weak points you would recognize in the EU's approach?
Hi, Florent. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. Yes, I've been following the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue since it was launched back in 2011, and it's been like 10 years since this process is ongoing. And we are not seeing the overarching goal of normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia being reached yet. If you look at the process, there are two phases. There is a technical phase and the political phase, which, in my opinion, everything discussed between Kosovo and Serbia is political. But given the fact that there were some agreements signed between Kosovo and Serbia which were considered technical, these agreements, I would consider that most of them have been quite effective in at least making it possible for the citizens of Kosovo and Serbia to navigate around each other, such as freedom of movement, and then there is a customs agreement and a telecom agreement which has been implemented already, and then there is the energy agreement which is in the process. But then when it comes to the political issues, such as the association of the Serbian municipalities, which is part of the Brussels Agreement signed in 2013, that's where the problem started, basically. Since 2013, unfortunately, we haven't seen any breakthrough and any implementation of the agreement. There has been partial implementation of some agreements which related to the judicial system in the northern part of Kosovo, the police, the formation of 4 municipalities, Serbian municipalities, but then there are some really hot topics which haven't been handled properly by Kosovo and Serbia. If you want me to assess how the obstacles of the EU, is the fact that the dialogue is in the External Action Service's hand, which needs a lot of political support from the EU member states. And from the EU member states in this regard, I mean Germany and France as the key driving forces, at least in the Western Balkans. And then, of course, is the involvement of other actors. I mean, clearly there is Serbia with its flirting approach towards Russia and China, which has further complicated the EU approach in the Western Balkans. And one of the key obstacles for the EU in this regard is the fact that the enlargement is gone. It's not there. And with that not being there, it's going to be very hard for the EU to actually deliver in the dialogue. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that this political fronts where it's also very difficult to have progress. 5 member states have not recognized Kosovo, which is also a challenge to the coherence of the foreign policy of the EU. Do you see any progress on that front too? Some member states who have not recognized Kosovo moving towards more engagement and dialogue towards Kosovo?
In fact, I mean, the dialogue is being facilitated by the non-recognizers in a way, because we are having Borrell leading the External Action Service, coming from Spain, which is very vocal against Kosovo in opposing its independence. And then there is Mr. Marciacq, who comes from Slovakia. So, you know, in Kosovo, this has been considered positive because, in a way, it enhanced communication with non-recognizers. But of course it has its shortcomings. If you look at how Kosovo progressed in the EU integration process, it is the 5 non-recognizers that are the key obstacles, and not just for the progress of Kosovo, but also when the EU designs its approach towards Western Balkans, there is always the elephant in the room, which is of course the Kosovo issue, which hasn't been addressed yet. There are some positive movements in terms of enhancing cooperation. Like in Greece, we have now in this liaison offices, and for the first time in like I think 2 years ago, we opened an office in Athens. And then of course, there is some positive movements in Spain with some statements, but that was it. So I think all these 5 non-recognizers are waiting for the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia to be concluded, to see how that process goes and what's the end goal of that process. And based on that result, they will come up with a decision whether to recognize Kosovo or not.
The issue between Serbia and Kosovo is not a bilateral one. It has regional implications. You mentioned also the relevance of Russia as a factor in this equation. What is exactly at stake, not only for Kosovo and Serbia, but in the region, and also for Europe and for the European Union, so on the geopolitical picture when we talk about this issue?
First of all, it's not just the future of the 2 countries in the EU. This is how it has been portrayed, pave the way towards the EU for the 2 countries, but it also has implications in the region, as you mentioned. And one of the key elements in here to be considered is the fact that many regional projects have been halted because of the Kosovo-Serbia dispute. And this is not because of the lack of will of one party or the other to participate in regional cooperation initiatives, but it was mostly because Serbia did not want to participate in any initiative which included Kosovo as a country. And given the fact that in the Balkans we don't only have Serbia now recognizing Kosovo, we also have Bosnia, which also has quite a lot of Serbian influence when it comes to Republika Srpska, then, having these 2 teaming up against Kosovo in regional cooperation wasn't really effective, and it failed many relevant initiatives in the region for this reason. And then, of course, the more you prolong the EU integration process and the more you have instability in the region, because, clearly Kosovo and Serbia issue is a source of instability, then of course it opens gaps for other external actors to engage in the region. I mentioned previously Russia. China is less explicit in this regard, but when it comes to Russia, its engagement in the region in supporting Serbia whenever there was a potential conflict with Kosovo, you can see that it's there. And it's not just Serbia against Kosovo, it's Russia against the West, NATO, and of course the EU.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the stagnation of the EU accession process, or even its agony. After many years of drowsiness, France has signaled its ambition, at least, to re-engage in the region. And several initiatives have already been launched. One of them, together with Germany, targets very much the issue of Serbia and Kosovo. We have heard that the whole region will be on the agenda of the French presidency, which will start early next year. What do you expect from France and from the French presidency, very concretely, to make small steps or to at least give some dynamic in a constructive way on this issue?
All eyes are on France. This is evident. In the Western Balkans, we are looking for the French presidency to pave the way for the EU integration process in the region. And by this, we mean France was the one that actually proposed a new methodology. What we are expecting is not just to immediately provide in the region, apart from North Macedonia and Albania open negotiations and Kosovo visa liberalization issue, but we want to have a clear, concise framework on how the EU integration process in the region is going to develop, and step by step. This is what we are expecting from France. It is very much welcome that there is renewed interest of France in the region. This is very good news because France belongs to these countries which is more opting for deepening than the widening. So having France teaming up with a new German government, which has placed Western Balkans in their government coalition agreement, will mean a lot for Western Balkans.
Thank you, Donika. So as we see, so the Kosovo-Serbia issue is part of a broader map of challenges. There is one which relates to the regional cooperation, and this is regional implications. We have one with the significance in the salience of the EU accession process. We have the geopolitical challenges and the stability in Europe. So thanks a lot for sharing these ideas.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Fondation Jean-Jaurès.
Penser pour agir.